Well, hello, hello. Thank you so much for having me. Such a great introduction. It's always an excitement to be part of this amazing conference when we all get together and as far as I've seen the tweets and all the presentations, I can see that we are providing evidence-based practices to ensure that our diverse population is getting the access to equitable opportunities that they deserve. So thank you so much for having me. And I'm still in a classroom, and I'm so excited to have a few minutes to share the things that are working in the classroom with my high school students. So I'm going to go ahead and start by presenting my slides. You will be engaging in the presentation, so hopefully you can prepare to collaborate. So I titled the presentation Identity Affirmation Through Literature and Language and Storytelling, because that's exactly what I love doing in the classroom. And personally, as an immigrant student, I identify with this title so much. To me, it's core to who we are and the impact that we make in society. So here it is. Hopefully you get some tools for your pocket to learn. I would love to stay engaged throughout the presentation. I have all these social media platforms that are professionals. So if you're on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, go ahead and tag me, share away, and let me know what your learning is throughout this session. I want to start with 3 words, and here they are. There's passion, there's persistence, and motivation. I want you to take a mental picture of these 3 words. Perhaps those 3 words get your attention. Or maybe there's just one word that you're looking at and you're saying, oh, I like that word. So either focus on one or focus on all 3 of them. It will be totally up to you. Maybe you have a notepad and write it down: passion, persistence, and motivation. Or just maybe choose one. I'm going to have you engage using one or all of these 3 words after I share with you a little bit about my story. I can't tell you the practices that I do without really sharing about my personal journey. I am the oldest of 5 children. This is my mother, a single mom with 5 children. We lived in Guatemala. I lived in Guatemala for 15 years of where I learned how to cook, how to do grocery shopping, how to take care of my siblings, how to do business transactions while my mother was having a business. She will travel to the coast and bring oranges for us to sell at the market. You know, as the oldest in the family, I took it upon me to support and help my mother. So if I was not at home taking care of the siblings, then I was at the market selling my oranges. And it was another part of our family that I took myself very important. You know, I will sell my orange. I will make sure that I was getting the money that I needed to get. Or if I did not sell all my oranges at the market, I would make sure that I would go from door to door to make sure that those goods were sold for us to have shelter over our head and bread on the table. Here's a picture of me just showing you how is it that I interacted with my brothers and sisters while we were at home, you know, cooking those black beans, those tortillas, and those essentials for us to exist. Education was also a part of my journey while I lived in Guatemala. If I was not at home helping the siblings, if I was not at the market selling naranjas, then I was at school and I loved it. I love being in school. I love doing research. I love engaging with my peers. I learned how to do presentations. I was very efficient in my reading and my writing. I had really good grades. Unfortunately, because we always had to move from place to place, we always had to move schools, and I was retained several years. So at the age of 15, I was able to achieve my 6th grade diploma, which, by the way, is a huge accomplishment in my country. But it was 1992 when my mother, we all as a family hit rock bottom, and my mother made the drastic decision to leave Guatemala, come here to the United States so she can provide for us a better future. The idea really was for her to come here, make some money, save money so she can go back home and build for us at least a shelter over our head. And so during those 2 years while my mother was gone, we were separated. I became fully guardian of my siblings. It was something that I was already used to doing. I knew how to do that. So it really wasn't much. Here's a shack where we built and we stayed there for a couple of years. And, you know, one of the games that I don't forget ever, and my siblings don't forget that either, is that we didn't have running water. So here's the bucket that we had to fill. And each of my little siblings had a small little bucket that will carry water from the factory to the house. So we would have somehow water for cooking and washing, whatever we needed to do. But of course, 2 years later is where my immigrant journey began. And it was a decision that my mother had to make. Either she goes back to Guatemala and we go back to selling our oranges and back to the life that we had, or her bringing her children here to the US. But of course, we didn't have the means to just get a legal documentation and come here with a passport. My mother had to hire a coyote, a smuggler. And here it is, me and my 2 younger sisters holding up to this word, hope. Because you're getting in a vehicle with a total stranger who all we had done is exchanging the word that they will bring me here to be reunited with my mother in exchange of money. So here we are in a journey for 2 months, going from hotel to motel and just looking at people going in and out. And you can see in their face that they were also holding on to hope, hoping that they were making that journey across borders to be reunited with families and really look for that greener grass on the other side. So 1994, 2 years later, we do make it to the United States. And this is exactly where my newcomer journey begins. I work with newcomers right now, and I can tell you exactly how they feel. That's the feeling that we have right here at this table, I mean, at this bed. Just in case you're wondering, I am not undocumented. I do have my documentation, and that's thanks to my grandmother who showed up at the airport and claimed us and was able to grant us the permission to be here in the United States with her. But this is where my journey began as a newcomer school in this huge, beautiful building called Martin Van Buren. You know, here we are thinking, no more selling oranges, no more bouncing from schools to school. We are going to school only and become successful. A teacher. That's what I always wanted to be. You know, ever since I saw a teacher down the hallway with kids behind her and the kids were following her directions, that's where that seed was planted for me to become a teacher. And golly, I knew I could be a really good teacher. But there were so many roadblocks that I hit while I was in school. And this is where I want to stop. And I didn't share a whole lot of details about my journey. I just gave you the essentials that you need to engage with me right now. So these are the 3 words I gave you at the beginning of sharing a little bit of my journey: passion, persistence, and motivation. Boosting Achievement book by Carol Salva and Anna Matt is called this, The Key to Success. A student, a newcomer has passion, has persistence, has motivation to be able to be successful here in the United States. And I have that, and I want your help. So Ariana, if I can go ahead and share that link, you are going to get a link to a Padlet. And in this Padlet, I want you to identify something that I share with you where you saw passion. Where did you see persistence? Where did you see motivation? Because I know I had it all throughout my journey before coming to the US. I had that. So if you go to the chat, there should be that link to that Padlet. And I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I am showing it over here too, because I do want to see what you are writing. Again, the assignment is for you to take that passion, that persistent, and that motivation word and identify something that you can see that throughout my journey. Okay. All right. So I see something already. Persistent. Yes. Yes. Carrying on once your mom left. I believe that. Thank you for sharing that. Passion. You had passion to help your family. Thank you so much. See, you identified that. Absolutely. Persistence, passion for teaching. Yes. Yeah. I didn't even know what it was to have your own classroom, but that passion was already there. Motivation. Oh, this is going really fast. Thank you so much. Despite the, I think I'm going to stop a little bit. Going from door to door to sell the oranges, that's persistence. Yes. Persistence, persistence. I see that word everywhere. Motivation. I see that word everywhere. Passion. I see that word everywhere. Oh my God, this is wonderful. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That's wonderful. Persistent, going from door to door, passion to help students reach their potential, passion in education. Very good. See, again, if you want to continue sharing, go ahead and continue sharing. But then again, I'm not making this up. You know, if really passion, persistence, and motivation are the key to success, I had exactly what I needed for me to be able to make it straight out of high school, going into college and becoming the teacher that I wanted to become. So thank you for identifying those keys throughout my story. Unfortunately, the wrong story is being told about newcomers. I wonder how many teachers wrote an email about myself. This is a legit email from a teacher about a newcomer in his classroom. I have a student who knows no English. She will just be sitting in class, fourth block civics all year, and not be able to do any assignments or work whatsoever. An idea for you to consider will be putting her in Mrs. Blank's class with Emily Francis in there full time, working completely with ELLs. This is the only way she has a chance of learning anything in civics this year. It's a freshman class, but I can't see that being a problem considering the situation. Obviously, she will fail if she has to be left in my class. It will be like me sitting in a class where only Spanish was spoken. I know no Spanish, and I will fail miserably too. So this is the wrong story being told. Let me go back to these three words: passion, persistence, and motivation. When a newcomer goes through our hallways and enter our classrooms, they come in with these three powerful keys that they need to be successful. But this is what they encounter. Teachers that do not see beyond that they don't speak English. Teachers that they do not see what they had experienced. A potential that is rooted on experiences is really hidden until the teacher gets it out of the student. All those experiences that I share with you were key for me to be able to confront anything that was put in front of me academically. Unfortunately, that is not what we do with students. We don't dig in what their persistence, what their passion is, but we paint them a different picture. We make them just learn English. We make them put aside their culture. We make them assimilate. And that's exactly what you see in this picture. You don't see it, but here it is, a student that made everything possible to make sure that she had learned the language, everything possible to make sure that she had put away all her culture, just to make sure that she assimilates and becomes the successful person that she was always wanted to be. The sad part is that that is not what happened. It didn't matter how much I put my culture aside. It didn't matter how much language I had learned. I couldn't graduate high school. The Regents exam put a block on me and I couldn't graduate. And of course, so close, but I became just a high school dropout in 1997. I became part of the statistics. So when you read a book with the statistics of dropouts in 97, that's me in there. I'm not proud of that. But I can tell you that I became part of the statistics because I was not given the opportunity to show my true potential. I was not given the opportunity to speak my home language. I was not given the opportunity to show my true self. And this is where I understand that we, the teachers, and if I can change the word teacher to any adult that works with newcomers, We, staff in buildings, we people who work with kids have the power in our hands to make or break our classrooms and how we want students to feel when they enter the classroom. Do we have them put their head down and go in the back of the room, or do we have them with an invitation to come in and making sure that they are included in everything that we do in the classroom? We can do that for them. We can have them take the road to success by providing opportunities for them. And that example came from Angie Power. She taught me how we as educators have the power to change the mindset of a student who feels like he or she is a failure. Angie Power asked me, tell me your story. I was interviewing for a position as a teacher assistant, and I didn't feel qualified. I didn't feel like I could do it. I didn't feel competent enough for a clean, nice job in a classroom. But she realized that my experiences can give me the foundation for me to impact students. She made me realize that everything that I had experienced up to the moment I arrived in her classroom had given me the tools for me to reach down within me and really show what I was capable of. And with her help and under her wing, I was able to get my associates, my bachelor's, and eventually got my licensure and be able to teach. Look how many years it took me. Because an ELL, when he or she is an ELL, they are ELL for life. And sometimes it takes us twice the time to make it. But as long as we know we are going to make it, and as long as we have the resources and the push to do it, we can achieve anything. I'm going to show you really quickly how does identity affirmation work? How is it that Angie did it for me? How is it that she was able to get out of me who I really am and how I can use that? So here's the book Dreamers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing so you can see full screen. And this is where we're going to engage in the chat. So when I have you shared, think about what you're sharing. But this is the way identity affirmation works. Dreamers by Yuji Morales tells her own story. So this is the story about an immigrant who first has a baby. And you can just tell she just has that baby, that love, that motherhood, that she started thinking about, what am I going to do for this baby? And how am I going to raise him? And what am I going to do for him? Parents will do anything for their children to make sure that they are safe and protected. And here's Yuji Morales packing her backpack because she made the decision that being back home was not what her child needed or what it was good for her. So she makes the decision to pack her backpack with essentials. And if we look very closely at the essentials that Yuji Morales packed, if you know about Yuji Morales, she's an artist. She loves music. She loves plants. I know that because I follow her Instagram and I know that's her identity. And I can see her identity in this backpack. The same thing was with me. So when I read this book, I started thinking about me packing that little backpack. That little phone call when they said, they're going to pick you up tomorrow. Make sure you pack your backpack with your essentials. When you hear the word essentials and you're not coming back to your home country, you start looking around. What am I going to pack? What am I going to take? To me, you know what it was? Pictures. My backpack had pictures of us playing in the river. My backpack had pictures of us playing in the house. My backpack was me paddling a bike with my sister because those moments were rich for me. The moments that I lived at home were my essentials. And so I put them all in my backpack. I also had the letters that my mother had written from New York City. So every single letter that she wrote was in my backpack. So here it is, Gigi Morales crossing the border, making it to the other side. And here she is admiring the new country. And I know how she feels because it's so exciting when you come to a new country. But and then she starts feeling that immigrant and not be able to speak English struggle. You know, she gets in trouble. She doesn't know her way around. She makes a phone call and she cannot understand. I know how she feels. And right now, as I read this book, I'm starting to understand myself. I'm starting to see that if these experiences are in a book that, by the way, had received many awards, then my experiences are important. Notice how affirmation works. It could be through text. It could be through someone talking to you. I want to skip through a few pages because I'm going to show you something very important. So here she goes throughout life with that backpack behind her back. And do you notice the backpack? It's not open. It's closed. The entire time she goes throughout the country, her backpack is closed. Your students are walking around your hallways with an invisible backpack. And you know what's in it? Their culture, their passion, their persistence, and their motivation. And it's going to stay in that backpack until you reaffirm that their passion, their persistence, and their motivation is rooted on their experiences. Until you make them realize that their experiences are worth something, that backpack will not open, because that's what happened to Juji. Once she began to read all these books about her life, about her experiences, about being something and somebody, then her backpack opens up and everything begins to pour out. So let's engage in the chat. Did you hear or did you see something in the pictures that you were able to identify with? Please tell me you did. Was there something that you were able to make a connection and say, oh my gosh, that's me, or oh my goodness, that's my student? Please tell me you were reaffirmed, because it is so powerful to hear, whether it's from a book, from a TED Talk, from a video, from a person, from a teacher, to have the chance and the place and the platform and the microphone to say, tell me your story. Thank you for those comments in the chat. I love that. Yep, it's me and my family. See, there you go. There you go. That's all you needed. You needed a little piece of text to demonstrate to you that your experiences are validated and important. Very good. All right. So we are going to go to presentation. Stop sharing. All right. Here we go. Oh, is it sharing? Let me make sure it's sharing. All right, so thank you for those engaging in the chat. I appreciate that. Let's go back to it. So hopefully this is how the effects of the identity affirmation is. I'm good, I deserve this, I can do this. Now, here's a list. I'm not going to go through all of this because I'll give you time with some homework for you to go through the do this and do not do this with your students. So I'm going to leave that slide for you and give you the honor and respect that you know how to read and you can go through this. I do this on campus, and I'm going to tell you, this is a great way to affirm our students' identities, language, background, and culture. I want to have some time to share with you a few lessons, because I'm in a classroom and that's what I do. I plan lessons to impact my students, to make sure that their identity is affirmed. So hopefully some of the lessons that I share here with you are something you can write down and use in the classroom as you begin planning for next school year, because I'm already planning for next school year. All right, so I do several lessons on our own identity. I think it's core for students to analyze their own identity. They need to understand who they are, where they come from, what experiences have they lived, what beliefs do they have, talk about their family, their food, their dances. Oh, all of this is part of our identity. One of the books that I use, so a couple of books I use, is Showway by Jacqueline Woodson. And it's a beautiful book that shows how the families, the heritage, were leaving marks all throughout South and North to escape slavery. And they will build a quilt with clues as to where to stop, where to go, where not to go. And so as we read the story, we start thinking our own heritage have left marks all throughout our lives. Our grandparents, our parents, and ourselves. Where have we been? What have we done? What has happened to us before we came to where we are? So after we read the book, at the end of the book, you can see Jacqueline Woodson's own family quilt. And so we imitate that. As a classroom, we can create our own quilt with our own personal stories. So each student will get a piece of paper as big as you want to make it. And then they put in all of this. I give them a bullet points of things that they can add. But of course, freedom to do whatever they want. They can do pictures or they can do sentences, however they feel comfortable. But we fill out the paper, no white spaces allowed, with everything that we appreciate about ourselves. And then if you can see really closely, there's ribbon that connects each of our pieces of paper, and that's how we do our quilt. Of course, I'm new here, but Annie S. Obley, I want to say her name is. So she wrote 2 books, I'm New Here and Someone New. Another book that I use in the classroom that talks about the experience of 3 newcomers, 3 different countries, 3 different identities, and they all feel like they do not fit in the classroom. But at the end, they figured out their passion. What are they passionate about? And as soon as they show to the classroom what they're passionate about, they start having friends, they start connecting with their peers. So one of them loves football. So as soon as she starts playing and showing how good she is, all the kids come to her and talk to her. And it's an amazing book that really helps our students to share about their own experiences. And of course, another activity that I do is talk about names. And I learned about the name 10 through Carol Salva. You know, you make sure their name it's important. It's highlighted as big as they can make it to make sure that we know how to say it. We know how to introduce to each other. They tell us where they're from, how many languages they speak. And I do have a link here, my name, myidentity.org. You should take a pledge. The pledge that you are going to honor your students' names. Let me just tell you, I'm not going to do a whole lecture of making sure that you do names correctly. I think that's important. I love my first name is Astrid. But if you say Astrid, then I'd rather you say Emily, because if you cannot say Astrid the way it should be, then I built my identity on Emily. And I think that should be respected. So talk to your students. You know, if they want to be Dana instead of Donna, that's what they're building their identity. Everything that we do on campus should be helping them to build their own identity, not what we want them to be, but how do they feel comfortable? Is their life, is their name? So make sure you do some lessons about that. And of course, we decorate our classrooms with our names. There's nothing more powerful than the walls reflecting who your students are, their names, that quilt that I showed you, you know, it decorates the walls, and their names decorates the walls. You know, have you ever been to a party and you're not invited? It feels pretty awkward. It's really awkward when you walk in and you know they did not want you there. The same thing in a classroom. If I walk in and everything represents the teacher, I don't feel invited. I don't feel like this is part of my classroom. So make sure the classroom is providing that comfortable environment and invitation for students. In our stories, of course, I do a whole unit on stories. You know, this one right here, The Water Princess, I always share that one because I know I'm not the only one who are experiencing carrying water, you know, from where it is to our home. So I'm always reading this book, and I always have students who identify with the Water Princess and the struggles that she goes through with her family to make sure that they have clean water. I share about Emmanuel's dream. If you don't know it, he has a very difficult life, not just the disability piece. Of course, that's key. That's why he became who he became. He's missing part of his leg, but everything he goes through, his father abandoned him. He had to go to school walking countless hours. And when students read stories like that, wow, if this character goes through all of that, so can I. I can make it too. So we do right here, if you can see, there is a retail about comparing and contrasting. So half of it is Emmanuel. So after they read about Emmanuel, they compare their own life and where were you born? What did you do when you were little? Did you learn how to ride a bike like Emmanuel? And then we combine our stories to see how we can empower ourselves with characters such as this. And of course, there's a link if you want to read it. I have a list of books that you can use to make sure that you are using authentic literature. When I say authentic literature, it's literature that reflects students' identity, literature that is written with respect, not someone who has not experienced it, but someone who has experienced it and respects the student's identity, writes about it, and the student reads it so they can reflect, kind of like that mirror that Dr. Bishop talked about. So here is a link that you can read about with a bunch of books that you can use. Also, I make my students write their own story. So the Literacy Association was able to publish my students' stories after reading somebody else's famous story. Why not you become famous telling your story, right? Giving students that opportunity. Lately, this year, of course, as the year wrapped up, I added these two components to my stories unit. So I was able to use Storyteller's website and Reimagine Immigration for moving stories. So not only I was able to use a lot of the books, but also a lot of the ideas from these wonderful resources. So Reimagine Immigration shows this beautiful arc that we can use as we help our students tell their stories. So I used to just jump into here, tell me your story, to creating now not a compromise, but we signed an agreement that I'm going to share what I feel comfortable sharing, not what the teacher is making me share. So that's something I learned from Imagine Immigration, that we're going to read about others' backgrounds. And when it comes time for me to share, I'm signing that I am going to share up to where I'm comfortable sharing. I think that's powerful to let the student know, I'm not putting you against the wall to share about you, but know your limits. You know, like right now when I share with you, there's some things I share with you, some things I don't. I choose what to reflect as part of my identity. And of course, with storytellers, you go in here, there's so many sessions that you can participate, some self-paced lessons that you as teacher can participate to learn how to help your students tell their story and help them that they have another narrative besides that failure narrative. What I learned from storytellers is that I was able to see my challenges as stepping stones to success versus ay, pobrecito, oh, I'm sorry you went through all of that. I don't want people to feel sorry for me. I don't want my students to feel like they need pity from anybody because of what they experienced. The other way around, everything they experience is powerful enough to be able to step on that and say, I did that. I went through that. It was a challenge, but I make the choice to define my own future, to switch it around, to put myself through school, to be able to tell a new narrative. Why? Because and then you can make change. Like today, I feel like I'm impacting the world. Look, right now, there's 142 of you listening to me. And that's because I saw my challenges. I made a choice, and now I'm changing my society by sharing stories and hopefully giving you tools for your pockets so you can help your students tell their own stories. So these are some of the lessons I wanted to share with you. I will give you access to this presentation, so you have all of these links. Muchísimas gracias for letting me share. I really appreciate the time for you to share. And of course, I had to ask permission from themselves to see if I can share, to let you know that I have a book releasing in just less than 2 months. If you only knew, Letters from an Immigrant Teacher. Not just because I wrote it, but because it's a book that we need in the classroom. Our students need literature that is authentic, compelling, that tells their stories. And then we need to give them the opportunity to not just listen to stories, but also opportunity for them to share their own stories. I do want to have some time if there are any questions I need to answer, but the last slide has my contact information. Email me if there was something that was not clear. I will make sure I make it clear for you. Stay connected through social media. And if you want to read more about my work, there is my my blog for you to be able to see what else is that I do besides telling you everything that I shared. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share the presentation, if that's okay.
Sure.
All right. Are there any questions you see in the chat that you think we need to address?
Yeah, if you have any questions or comments about Emily and her presentation, please share it now. The power of your students' stories. Talk about the impact that it's had on their lives.
All right, so with the power that what I've seen with my students is the power of removing that silence button that they have, like when you're in a presentation, you're muted. You feel like you're talking, but hey, you got to push that button. And I feel like students are like that they want to share, they want the platform, they want the opportunity in this space, but they will not do it until they've given that opportunity. So as I have shared the story with students, I feel like they have been given the permission to say, hey, can I share my story too? So yeah, that is really something that I've taken, that every time I share my story with my students, I give them the opportunity and the power for them to share their own.
And I wonder about, we had a really incredible presentation yesterday about colorblind racism in the classroom. And so I wonder how teachers can sort of navigate these things, and even at the administrative level, how that will be handled.
First of all, I'm not going to say ignorance, because it's not. I think we all have a learning process as educators. And if we're not there yet, it is our responsibility to make sure that we are acquiring those tools that we need to be able to impact our students. So it's teachers who see no color and all students are the same. I think we need to address it as, hey, I got a link for you about a video. Would you like to watch it? Or, hey, here's a wonderful article about making content comprehensible by tapping into students' background. I really think that if I have the tools, if I have the experience, then reach out to those colleagues and say, would you like this resource? And not treat them as ignorant, but as someone who needs that information to better serve students. But, I personally, I didn't know how powerful it is to be bilingual. My own son grew up without learning 2 languages, because before school, to me, it was, oh no, you got to speak English, only English. And then I put myself through school, and here am I reading all these books and all this research about the power of bilingualism. So now I do better with my second child. Now my second child is bilingual. The same thing with teachers. If they are not doing better right now, let's teach them, let's educate them so then they can do better.
Speaking of bilingualism, Evelyn asked, for newcomer students, do you make books available in Spanish or other native languages when they don't have the English yet for reading in English?
For sure. Of course, this is everything that I share here with you. Everything is done in a bilingual setting. I don't speak Arabic, but for sure, here am I letting my students, making sure that they are reading in Arabic. I do try to find a lot of resources that are online, just because having the Chromebook, student can automatically translate should they want to read in their home language. Why not? Now, if I have a book that is only in English, then there's a lot of scaffoldings we can do. So I do a lot of sketching. For example, when I read Dreamers, it was in English. I did not read it in Spanish and Arabic. It was all in English. But I did make sure that I was stopping and having students do sketching so they can understand what they were reading. But if the text is available in home language, golly, yes, let students use home language so they can feel validated not only on campus, but they go home and say, hey, mama, guess what? My teacher let me speak Spanish. Can we just practice over here at home? You know, that's what we want. We want our students to feel that it's important for them to keep their language, for sure.
And of course, Dreamers is very pictorial. It's very image oriented. We actually, the Immigrant Learning Center has a mini curriculum on a graphic novel called Welcome to the New World, about a Syrian family that was relocated to the US on election day in 2016. It's a fantastic resource. Please, Aiden will put the link in the chat momentarily. But as I talk about picture books, Michelle wants to know if there are non-picture books that you would recommend for high school students.
Non-picture books for high school students. I will say, you know, Ephraim Divided, it is not available in other languages. It's just in English, but it's a story about his parents being deported and him having to take care of his siblings. So there are books out there. So if you go to my blog, there is a section called My Reading Life. So if you click on that tab, I have so many books that I could recommend that if I give you a list right now, I probably wouldn't even remember all of them, but there are so many great stories that my classroom, that's all I do. Every year I do a donors choose or a clear the list, but every year I add a good chunk of books that students have available in the classroom, and I read them myself. So don't be buying books that you're not reading and expecting your students to read it. If I'm going to tell my student to read Dreamers, it's because I read it and I tell my student what the book is about. So really, there's so many books out there that I will recommend you making sure that it's authentic, that is written with respect, and someone who have really lived it, because there's a power behind that authenticity of literature.
And yes, Evelyn found the link and she's put it in the chat box. Emily Astrid Francis.
Gracias.
Thank you so much for joining us once again this year and sharing your story.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. And I sure hope I provided rich information for everyone being here today.
Oh, tremendously. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Bye.